Hello and welcome back to the Complete Web Development Series. In this video, what we're going to be doing is talking about context, and we're going to talk about how annoying props can get to manage and what we can do to solve that. And the reason we're going to do it in this video is because we need to start making our forms work and have routing and things changing. And the best way to do this is kind of use some context in our application. So what is context? Well, one of the most annoying things in React is the fact that if you have a component, you can nest components in the component. And in fact, the actual main application is like a component, and it goes almost ridiculous levels deep with components. And if I need to pass data around between these different components, it becomes somewhat difficult. So in React, a component has its own state. And that state is data, and it has its own props, and that can be manipulated and changed within its component. But if I want to pass data from this component down into its child component, I have to set up a prop on the child component and pass that down. And that's okay if you need to do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. The problem comes in what if my child component doesn't need that prop, but that child's component's child needs the data? Well, then you have to pass it down to the child component who doesn't need it, and then again pass it down to the grandchild that does need it. And that can go on indefinitely, and that becomes a real pain in the butt to deal with. And so if you ever find yourself doing it, I would consider changing how you're doing the data altogether. And one way around that, you can use some sort of external store, which I like to use MobX for this. There's also Redux you can use, and easy peasy, things like that. But we're using vanilla React in this tutorial series. So what we're going to do is use React hooks, some of the hooks that they give us, and we're going to use something called context. Now, context, what it does is allows us to store some data and functions in a separate file, or if you will, our separate component. And we can wrap our entire application if we want with that context, and it becomes a provider that provides the data down through all of the children that are within that wrapper, that provider. So let's go ahead and dive right in and just show you what I mean. It's probably easier. This is probably the most complex thing that we're gonna go over in this tutorial series, and I don't expect you to really understand it completely after this video, but just to start getting your mind around it a little bit, and as we use it more and more, hopefully you will pick up why we're doing it more and more. But let's go ahead and make sure we don't have some of the issues that we had at the beginning of the last video. So I'm going to make sure first that my example server is up and running, because that is what we have our database running on right now. MySQL sudo service Apache 2 stop. All right, and so we got that up and running now. We don't really need Apache. Really what we're looking for in example is MySQL. So that's good to go now. And the next thing we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to open another tab here. And let me give you guys a little bit of, blow that text up a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and go back to my API here and just make sure that this is up and running. So I'm going to hit npm start on that, and now my my Node.js server is up and running. The next thing we'll do, I'm going to go back here, I'm going to open another tab, and what we'll do here is we're going to do npm start here to start our Node server for React. So this will open up our localhost 3000, and now our development version of React is up and running. Hopefully hot reloading works this time. And then what we're going to do is back on our original tab here, I'm going to create a new branch for us to work on. and that will be, this is video 7 already, wow. So git checkout -b v7. We'll clear this, and then I'm gonna do a git push -u, oops, git push -u origin v7. All right, now we are prepared to make changes to this branch, and then you guys can see what we did in just this video. So let's go ahead now and jump into our application, and we won't need this ajax.js open. We won't need form.js open. Go ahead and let's create, inside of our source here, let's create another folder, and we're going to call this folder, let's call it context. And inside there, let's create a new file. And what we want to do here is let's create a file called context provider.js. Okay. And then we're going to work with 2 contexts as we go here. So we're going to create another, oh, not a folder, sorry. We're going to create another file in here, and we'll call this one auth context.js. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to actually have quite a bit of context to deal with in this application. We're going to have a separate one for our to-do data and functions. We're going to have a separate one for our contact, and we're going to have another one for our authentication. And we don't want to have to maintain that, like keep adding it. So what we're going to do is actually create like kind of a master context provider here that we can add all of our context to, and then our application will just use this one provider and it will give them all of it. Okay, it's just a little bit of a lazy way for me to add it to everything. So we're going to import React from React here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to import our auth I'm going to call it auth store from auth context, which we haven't built this yet, but this will need quotes here. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a const of context provider, and that is going to be equal to actually, you know what, let's do a function here, function context provider, and this will take in props. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to return and what we want to return here for now is our auth store, and this is going to be a component or a provider here, and we're just going to pass our props.children into this. So what's going to happen is we're basically wrapping anything that we put inside of our context provider with our auth store. Next thing we do is we need to export this module so we can use it. So we're going to do export default context provider, just like that. And then what we want to do, in order to use this, open up your app.js, and in the app.js, we want to import that context provider. And then right here where we have this router, we're returning a router. What we want to do is we just want to wrap that whole application here. So we'll move all of this as a child here. And now, well, I messed up all my indentation here, so let me fix that. There we go. So now we have our application has this context provider, and then inside of that we have our normal router with our switch that controls the auth in this, okay? Now, now what we can do is we passed our props.children. In this case, this props.children is our entire app.js. It's this stuff here. This is all of our apps, our props.children that gets passed into context provider. So now we're going to be able to provide anything in here with the data from the auth store so far. So let's go ahead now and look at what that does. So let's inside of our auth context here, we're going to start building up this. So what we're going to do is say import React, and then we're going to need a few other things here. We're going to use our use reducer. Actually, for now, we don't need that. Let's just do a create context. We're going to use that hook, and that comes from React. We're going to add more to this later, but for now, that's all we're going to need just to demonstrate what is going on there. Just to demonstrate what's going on here. And then what we'll do here is we're going to export a constant called auth context, and this is going to be equal to create context. So we're just calling this React function here and setting it equal to auth context, okay, and we're exporting that. Then what we're going to want to do is down here we're going to export another function called auth store, and this is going to take props, and this auth store here is going to have a couple things, but what we're going to be ultimately doing here is we are going to return auth context. Now we just created that right here, so this is a instantiation from this create context function. So we have this available, and inside of here what we're going to do is use a dot provider. Okay, dot provider, and what this dot provider is going to do is this is actually what's going to provide information down to our children. So what we're going to do is inside of here we're just going to props children. So whatever gets wrapped in this auth store here is going to have this provider providing data to it, or context to it. So then we get to tell it what are we going to provide to it. So in this value here, I think what we'll do here, let's just provide a value of for now I'm just going to put 1 2 3. Okay, it doesn't matter. So let's say this is some sort of user ID or something like that we have, and we want our children to have access to this value. Now later we're going to make this all dynamic and everything, but I'm just trying to show you the simplest way to pass this value down so that we don't have to, because normally what you'd have to do is you're going to have some sort, you would have some sort of component here. So we'll say, you know, parent component, and in this parent component you would have a child 1, and then in there you would have a child 2, and in there you might have a child 3, and this goes on indefinitely for your entire React application. Let's say finally down here you want to display this user ID, right? Well, let's say you have this, you only have access to this in this parent, and so what you would have to do is you would have to call this child. You'd have to send props down of user ID is equal to 1 2 3, and then in child 2 would also need to pass that down. So you have user ID 1 2 3, and then you this child you would need user ID 1 2 3. And in fact, what we're going to do here, let's just make this an object that we pass down, and this will be user ID. All right. So then right here you would finally have access to props.userid, But the original user ID was in this parent, and this child didn't need it. This child didn't need it. Finally, this child needed it, but in order for this child to get it, we had to pass it through all the other children. Now, this is only 3 levels deep, but your React application is going to get very, very deep very, very quickly. And this is a nightmare. So instead, if we use a provider and we wrap this parent in the provider and we provide that with 1, 2, 3, we can easily not worry about it in this child, not worry about it in this child, and then in this child we can actually just have access to that because of this provider. It's going to provide it down in a global scope, if you will, all the way down, and now we can use user ID in the 3rd child without passing it through child 1 and child 2. So that is what we're trying to accomplish in this video. So let's see how we could do that. So if in this auth store, we're providing user ID 1, 2, 3, and then let's go to our app index and see if we can figure out how to use this. Let me get to okay. So in our app index now, if we want access to that, we can just import our auth context, and we're going to get that from, let's see, we are in this, yeah, we're going to go to contexts, oops, / auth context. And then what we can do is up here we're going to add another React hook, and we're going to use context. Okay. Then what we could do is inside of our component here, up here at the top somewhere, we can say const. Let's just do data. Const data is going to be equal to use context, and then we're going to pass that the auth context into that. Now what we can do is we could do like a console.log data, and let's see what we have there. So let me open up my inspector. You can see that we have an object here, and inside that object we have user ID. So no matter how many levels deep this is, I can just use the context by using this use context, and now I have access to that user ID, and if I console log that now, you can see that I'm getting 1, 2, 3. Okay. Let's see if I have, okay, those were previous errors from when we were setting it up, but yeah, now we have access to 1, 2, 3. We could do that in anything we wanted. So I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this for now. I'm not sure that we're going to even need, yeah, we'll need it here. So I'll leave this here for now. We'll leave this import because we're gonna use that in a little while. But now in our auth context, let's see, what do we want to do here? I want to set up, we want to start setting up the ability for us to log in. Let me see how long we've gone in the video so far. 19 minutes. Trying to decide if we should set up, you know what, let's just go ahead and set up a couple things for the rest of this video. What I want to do here is inside of our components we have this auth and we have an auth index. I'd like to create in here a couple new files. The first one is going to be our login.js, and then another one is going to be our signup.js. Okay, and let's go ahead and look at our login.js real quick. And in this file, we're going to go ahead and turn off my heater. Also, I guess I'll just leave it now, but I keep forgetting to move my microphone forward. And since we've gone through most of the video with it back there, it'll just sound a little more echoey than normal. It might still be loud enough for you guys. Sorry about that. So then what we're gonna do is we're gonna import use state and use context from React. Then what we're gonna do is we're going to import link and use history from React router DOM. We've already seen that library once before. And then we're going to need our field block. And then we're also going to need our form. So let's import our form from we have to back up twice, and we'll say helpers, and then we have our form here. We'll import our button from elements /button, and we will import our auth context from our contexts auth context. Once we've done that, we're going to create a component called login. So we'll use a function login, and in here, let's go ahead and set up our history and our state. So we're going to set up history is going to be equal to use history. Now we have access to that, and I'll show you what we're going to do with that in a little while. And then we'll do const fields and set fields. Now this is going to be for our form, and in here we're going to use our use state hook, and that is going to be an object by default we're going to pass in. And on this login, what we need here is we need our email. Now remember, we kind of already set this up. I could have just copied it from the other file, but we need our value is invalid, which is false, and then we need our message, which is just an empty string. And we're going to need the same thing. We'll need the same thing for password. All right, so now we have our state set up for our form fields. The next thing that we're going to do is let's just go ahead and instantiate that form. So we'll say const form is equal to new form. And what we're going to do is on our form, we're going to send this to our users /login. And then we'll pass our fields and our set fields function that we get from our use state function in, and then we're going to need a success function as well here. So let's go ahead now and get that. So we'll say an async function success. That's going to take the response, and for now let's just do a console log dot response there. Now let's actually do our the JSX part. So we'll do a return here. And before we get too far, down here at the very bottom of the file outside of this function, let's export default login. So it'll export this function. And now on this return, come on now. Let's set up a div. Inside of that div, let's do an h2 tag. And in this H2, let's just say login. And then let's set up a field block. And you know what? Let's go back to our app.index, and I already have these field blocks right here. So I'm going to grab those, paste them in, and these are they already have all the correct values in them. And then what we're going to do underneath this field block here, I'm not sure why. All right, underneath this field block, we're going to do a div, and we're going to give this a class name equal to L footer buttons. We're going to give it a class of dflex, a class of justify content between, and align items center. Okay. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to have a link, and we're going to send to auth signup. Okay. So I'm just going to put the word register there. And then lastly, we're going to use one of our buttons, and it's going to have a variant equal to primary. And on the onClick, we're going to call the form.submitForm method. And we'll just do login just like that. All right, so now we have our login form, and we need to use that. So let me see, in our app index here, we've been just kind of doing a lot of stuff in this app index, but the app index needs to be a little different. And so what we're going to do here is, instead of these field blocks, this form that we normally had here, for now, let's go ahead and put in, actually go to app.js, and this form needs to go to our auth index. So let's go there, let's go to auth index, and right here we just had this for now. So in the auth index, let's go ahead and we are just going to import our switch and our route from React router DOM, and then we want to import our login from login. And then what we could do is, inside this auth index, we're going to let's create a main with a class name equal to auth layout, and then we're going to do a div with a class name equal to poster. And then inside that, we're going to use our switch, and we'll set up a route here, and we're going to say, hey, if this the exact path is equal to /auth/login, then what we're going to do is use the component login, and we can just close that right there. Let's see, why is it complaining? And that's because I typed router up here instead of route. All right, so now let's try that out. Let's go to our localhost 3000, and we're going to go /auth/login. And now you can see we have this login form. It doesn't look good, so let's go ahead and finish up what we need to with our CSS to make that look good. So go to app.css. And we're going to need a couple things here. Where are we at? Not app.css, I'm sorry. Let's go to public styles app.css. Yeah, and let's see. Let's go ahead and we're going to need a couple things. We have our nav, we have our buttons. Let's go back up towards the top here, and underneath right here where we have app, let's create a new comment here, and we're going to say layouts. So we already have app and we have our main content. Let's go ahead and do our auth layout. So auth layout. And for here, we're going to have a background color. We're going to use our gray dark variable. For display, we're going to use flex. We're going to use justify content center. We're going to use align items center as well. And let's do a width of 100 view width. And we'll do a height of 100 view height. So that's our auth layout. Now we also used that poster. So let's go ahead and take care of that. We want to do a background color of, use our variable here, and we're going to use our gray X light. We'll give this a border radius of, let's do 8 pixels. That'll look nice. We'll give it a border of 1 pixel solid, and we'll just use 333 here. And let's do a box shadow. We'll do 2 pixels on the X, 2 pixels on the Y, a 6 pixel blur, and we'll use RGBA black, so 000, and then a 0.2 for our opacity there. And then for padding, let's use 18 pixels. So let's save that. And now you can see that we're starting to get this to look better as a login form. We got that dark background, and this is our poster. Okay. The next thing we used is we used the class called .lFooter buttons. And here all we're going to do is we're going to give this some margin top of 32 pixels. And we're going to do a text align right here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say if it's L footer buttons, inside of that, if it is a .btn, so if it's a button, then we're going to do a margin left of 12 pixels. And that gives that some left pixel there. So now we have this login, and then we have a register. If I click register, it takes us to the sign up. We don't have that component yet, but it's working. So I'm gonna hit back, and now we have this. So now our login form should work. Let's go ahead and try that out. We use Curtis at Freeskills. Password, hit login, and you can see here that we get back our success and our token here. So awesome, we have that console logged, and that's being console logged from this success function right here. Ultimately, everything was going through this form. When we click this, it submitted the form. What else did we want to take care of today? Let me see. We had quite a few flex helpers. We might as well, let's knock those out real quick. Let's go to our app.css. Let's add these right here underneath our layout. I'm just going to do some flex helpers, and this will be all those like classes that we used, like the for example, the dflex and stuff like that. So .dflex, we're going to do display, and I'm just going to do a lot of these in line here like this. Flex wrap. And then we'll do justify content start. Justify content flex start. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the rest of these so that you don't have to watch me type them all out, but you can pause the video and put the rest of these in. So that's all. Basically what we have here is just some justify content start, center, in, between, and around that all have the correct values. And then we have some align items center, start, baseline, and stretch. And then we got some flex grow and a flex gap 32 that we're going to use later on. So go ahead and pause the video and make sure you have all these flex wrappers. They're just some classes that we can use later on. I didn't want to mess with that too much. Let's see. I think I'm just double checking here. Yeah, I think we're actually done with all the CSS for the entire project now. So there we go. We can go ahead and close that down. So let's go back now. We shouldn't have any issues here. So what we're going to do is in the next video, we're going to learn a few more React hooks to go ahead and take that token and set that up and have things start passing data through our context that we created today to determine whether or not they need to log in. And if they already logged in, what we want to do is route them to a different part of the application. So I will see you guys in that video. Please comment, like, subscribe. I hope you are enjoying this so far. I know that I am having fun. This is not the easiest thing to teach, so bear with me. And I think you guys will get it through repetition. But just remember that context gives us kind of a global scope that we can use to avoid passing props down iteratively, just to be a real pain in the butt. So that's kind of the main goal of this video is to start understanding why you use context, see a little bit of how the provider works, and then we're going to use so much repetition that you're going to get it as we go. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.